Hey everyone, Rob here, and today we're going to do an updated new player guide for Corepunk. So we did one of these about like a week ago, probably 2 days before the game's alpha launched, but about 2 or 3 days into the alpha, they actually had to wipe the alpha due to some exploits, and then they made some pretty significant changes. So what they did was they increased the XP you get from monsters and quests by about 40%, and the way it was worded was this was to compensate for the wipe, right? So we're unsure if this is actually going to be something that's going to stick going into the early access in November, right? Because it seems like it was just done for the wipe, although it may be something that sticks if people end up really liking it and think it kind of fits well, think it rounds out the earlier progression better, which I am of the opinion that it does. I'll definitely be suggesting that it sticks, as I think it's probably just going to be a better new player experience for most people if it does stick. But right now it's in the game, so we're going to redo this guide so anybody that's kind of coming in to play after the wipe can have an updated guide to go by. So you come into the game and you start basically right here. You pick up a quest from this Orbit guy and you walk north. You pick up another quest from Maxwell Sterling, and this is the campfire quest. There's a bundle of wood like right next to Maxwell. You just pick it up, you turn it back into him, and it completes the quest. Now this gives you campfires as well as matches. I'll explain kind of what those do in a moment. And it also gives you a campfire recipe. You can learn the campfire recipe by just right-clicking on it, and that'll allow you to make campfires at a cooking station, which we'll get to in a moment. So you keep going north, and you get to this house. There's a little document outside this house which you need to pick up for the quest you did, or you're doing for Orbit here. And you pick up the document. There's other quests here. You can pick up that one if you want. There's some more on the way into the heart of town. Town is this big, it's pretty much all the fields here, right? And then the heart of town is over here. It's the main questing hub, and there's kind of like another questing mini hub over here. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to be picking up the document over here on the table in front of the house, and then going straight north all the way up here to Zug Clank Whistle. Now, Zug is going to be kind of like your main guy for the main story quest in this first area, right? So eventually you're going to leave this area, but until you do, Zug is kind of going to be your main story guy here. So you basically talk to Zug as soon as you get up here, and then he is going to direct you to Big Mama, I believe. Now, Big Mama is kind of like the cooking trainer. She's over here. You actually can't see her by clicking on her on the map. I believe she's supposed to be one of these icons, but it just gives the same guy twice. However, she is the cooking trainer, and she's also somewhat involved in the main story early on here, along with Zug. So basically, you're going to talk to her, and she's going to give you the quest for bread. So, how to make bread, basically. And basically, how you make bread is you need wheat and salt. So Big Mama sells the salt, and then you can get wheat seeds from these fields basically by breaking open like sacks of wheat, and you can bring them back to the cooking station to turn them into wheat itself, and then you combine the wheat with the salt and you make the bread. I believe it's 3 wheat seeds to 1 wheat. Now you can alternatively come down to the wheat tent right here and just buy the wheat. So that's something you can do as well. But either way, you get the ingredients, you go to the cooking station, which is right here, and you make the bread, and that completes the quest. So right after that, I'm not sure if it's you go back to Zug and then go back to Big Mama, or if Big Mama just gives you the next quest right away. But either way, she'll give you a quest to interact with basically the NPCs in the town, right? So it's basically to familiarize yourself with the townspeople, and specifically the crafting stations within the town. Right, so there's going to be a herbalism station here, a butchery station, and a logging station, a mining station. Then this is for weaponsmithing. This is for construction, which is basically going to make your artifacts, which are kind of like the armor in this game. There's a rune smithing station, right, which is going to make runes, and then an alchemy station, which is going to make your consume. So the butchery, the herbalism, logging, and the mining are all gathering, and then the weaponsmithing, construction, runesmithing, and then alchemy are all the like the trade skill professions is the idea. And the game is going to try and kind of it's kind of going to try and expose you to all of them, right? So how the Big Mama quest works is you're going to have a number of options, and you just have to like help 4 of these people a certain amount, and once you help them, they give you a letter of thanks, and you bring them back to Big Mama, and that goes to the next part of the quest, right? So you can basically do any of these, but what I recommend doing is, as soon as you get that quest from Big Mama, the first one to help the townspeople, is you'd go out into the kind of like the wilderness here, and you gather. How you gather, in my opinion, doesn't really matter at this stage. I have a video about gathering, and it's going to talk about this concept called efficiency, which is basically you can't be the best at every gathering profession simultaneously, just like you can't be the best at every trade skill simultaneously. You have like 0 to 100% in your efficiency, and you have to spread that out between all of your skills. You can go 100% and then none in the others. You can go 60%, and then you have 40% remaining to distribute by the others, right? But none of that matters early on, so don't worry about that too much. And if you want to learn more about that, check out the gathering profession video, because you don't need a high level of efficiency to get any of the early gathering supplies, basically. What you want to be doing is you want to kind of go out into the world away from town, because there's not really resources super close to town. But if you go out a little bit, kind of like in this area right here, even like right outside of town right here, even in the starting area, they now kind of added some more resources. So yeah, you just kind of go out into the wilderness and you start collecting resources. You basically want to collect green resources of every type. So green resources from mining nodes, green resources from herbalism nodes, green resources from logging nodes, and then the main one you don't have to do right away is you don't have to worry about the butchery. So I would just do logging, herbalism, and then mining, and just do a little bit of each, get like a decent amount of the basic mats, and then you'll kind of go back into town, right? And you should be able to complete a lot of the quests at these gathering stations, except for the butchery one, because you obviously didn't do the butchery one. Now, why I recommend not doing the butchery one is because killing stuff in the early game that drops the butchery mats can be quite hard. Some of the boars are pretty dangerous if you're level like 2, or like level 1 or 2, or even level 3. And you basically gain a lot of strength as you kind of level up in the very, very early game, because every time you level up from level 1 to level 3, you gain an ability. So you're a lot more stronger at level 3, not just like base stat wise, but you also have 3 abilities versus when you're at level 1, and then you get your ultimate at level 6. So that's why I recommend just kind of going out and doing the gathering. If you talk to these NPCs before you go out, you'll see exactly what materials you need, right? Because you'll just pick up the quest, and then they'll go into your quest log, and you'll be able to tell exactly which materials you need. But it's very basic stuff. If you just go out and you gather for probably like 20 minutes, and you hit mining nodes, you hit logging nodes, and you hit herbalism nodes, you should pretty much probably have the requisite materials to go back into town. You talk to these gathering profession people here, and then you'll be able to complete the quest. Now, a lot of these you can see have like 3 quests on them, so you'll be able to like talk to them, turn in the first quest, and if you gathered enough stuff, sometimes you'll even be able to turn in the follow-up quest and then the quest after that. So that's why I recommend just going out there for a solid amount of time. But you could also go out there, do the first quest, talk to them, do the second quest and stuff like that. It's not a rush. Remember, this is an alpha, right? So use this time to acclimate yourself to the game and get like a handle on how the quests work and what you need for the quest. That way, when you go into the game on early access, you'll have an easy time. Just you know exactly what you need, and you can bang them out really quick, right? But that's what you probably want to do first. When you complete this quest for Big Mama, the one to help out the people in the town, she gives you another one where you help out essentially different types of people now. So that's going to be like the follow-up to that. And then after that, she gives you like a main story quest to kind of go out here to this crash site to talk to Zug's brother. I believe Zug actually gives the quest, if I'm not mistaken. But I would say it's very easy to do the initial quest for Big Mama, where you talk to all these townspeople and you do their little quests. And then you do the second round of quests for Big Mama, right? And then you're going to have some residual quests after that you didn't complete as well, right? Because you're not going to how it basically works is when you talk to Big Mama to do these help the townspeople quests, you only need to do like 4 of the ones she tells you, right? And there's like sometimes 6 or sometimes 8 of them for each one, right? So you basically do the 4, talk to her, you get the reward. She gives you the other quest to do another 4. You do the other 4, and then you can kind of clean up the other ones as you see fit. And then coming over here, there's a lot of easy quests to do as well. Some of the quests are like right in town. Like there's a girl over here. Both of these people actually want you to go to the kitchen area, which is like right over here. It's like behind the Big Mama crafting area with the cooking bench. You basically go to this building right here, and there's a bottle of whiskey and there's a blueberry pie sitting like right outside the building, and you pick them up and you turn them in over here, right? And so those are easy quests. And then there's a guy over here that wants herbalism mats. He's an easy quest. There's a guy over here that wants eggs and then gems. The gems come from mining and the eggs come from chickens. The chickens are best concentrated like right in this area around this farmhouse, although they can be found all over the city really, but there's usually big concentrations that spawn here. So doing all these like little quests is actually really nice and adds up, especially with the 40% XP. And I wouldn't have suggested people go crazy on this the first time around, but after the quest experience buff, I think it's much better to do these, and you can kind of get to like level 7 or 8 like very quickly, at least like 6, I would say. And getting to level 6 is really nice because it unlocks your ultimate, makes you a lot more powerful generally speaking, and that makes it way easier to do some of the later quests, right, or to farm some of the higher tier resources, because the higher tier resources tend to be in areas that are higher level essentially and are harder to navigate, right? So that quest after you do the 2 Big Mama quests, where you talk to Zug and he wants you to find his brother out here, this area over here, Westwind, is quite dangerous, and there's quite a few high level mobs in there. So that's going to be kind of like the first point where if you rush the main story, you may kind of hit a wall there, right? So that's why I recommend you do the other quests. And then if you're still feeling too weak, just do a bit of gathering and perhaps some crafting. Because gathering and crafting both give decent XP in this game, at least early. Kind of really starts to fall off in the later portion, but earlier on, it's still pretty decent. So yeah, I would recommend after you get all the basic quests kind of knocked out in town and you're kind of stuck on that, gotta start really doing the main story quest now, you can kind of go and work on your gathering, crafting, etc. Right? So how do you do that? Well, again, the secret is basically you want to be away from town. And how it would work, I would say, is generally speaking, you tend to find the best resources further away from town. If you view this town as like the center point of the map, then the further direction you go in any way, the mobs get scarier and more dangerous and give more XP and are more rewarding. And then the resource nodes tend to also be more plentiful or more rewarding. Now, this isn't always the case depending on where you go, right? But I'll kind of give you the cliff notes on where to find some resources, right? So if you're going to do some gathering, this area right here is actually pretty good for gathering most resources. So is like this area right here, areas that are kind of close to town but not right up against it, right? And you can basically kind of gather all the different types of resources there. Herbalism, logging, and mining. And there's also boars in these areas as well for butchery. So that's an option. And then as you gain more experience in each of the crafting professions and you get to journeyman and eventually craftsman rank, which is basically just allows you to do different tiers of nodes. So you start out only being able to hit tier 1 nodes. When you become a journeyman, which is just you do enough gathering to become a journeyman, now you can hit tier 2 nodes. When you do enough gathering to become a craftsman, you now can hit tier 3 nodes. And I believe that is level 1 for the first one, then 250, and then 1,000 is the level you need for craftsman. So as you start to increase these thresholds, you can go deeper into the zones and collect like the more rare resources. If you're looking for rare mining nodes, they're in this area mostly over here, right, in Westwind. There's also a quarry here, which has a good bit of kind of like higher level mining nodes. You don't go here at the start because the mining nodes are kind of like too high level. You won't be able to hit them, but this is a really good source of mining XP and materials once you have your mining at like 1,000. And if you're looking for herbalism, it's basically all in this area over here, I would say. And then trees are kind of like everywhere, right? It's kind of like the same thing with herbs, although there's not a lot of herbs in this Westwind area, unless you're talking about the little green areas right here. These patches of green inside Westwind, there are herbs in there, but outside of those green patches, there's not a lot of herbs. So herbs are mostly going to be kind of like this area, this whole top part, right, spread around here. There's some here, there's some here, right, and then there's trees here as well, right? There's trees. There's a lot of trees in Westwind, actually, and then there's trees up top. So trees and herbs are pretty plentiful, but mining tends to have its kind of spots, mostly in here and in this quarry. And then there's also some mining nodes kind of down here in this kind of like area early. This area, it just has a bunch of mix of stuff that's all low level. So that's why I'd say like sticking to these areas is kind of good at the start of the game, because there's a lot of low level stuff around there, and you can hit it all. You don't have to worry about not being able to hit it or anything like that. So I want to talk a little bit about the campfires and the bread, and we mentioned those earlier on. We're doing those quests, but why are they important, right? So there's actually no passive regen in this game, and that's kind of a big deal. And there's basically two ways to circumvent that, right? It's one, you can heal up when you go to a campfire, right? So you'll see there's some little campfires here in the main city. So normally that would involve you going out, doing some things, coming back and sitting at the campfire and regenning and then going back out. And that's a pain, right? So when you can craft the campfires at the cooking station, because you get the campfire recipe early, now you can kind of bring the campfires out with you and you can just drop them at your leisure when you need to heal up in the wilderness. So that's kind of like the big deal with campfires and why they're so strong. And then the food is kind of the same thing. Food can either restore your health or your mana or both, depending on the type of food it is. And there's some food that can even give you temporary buffs, where if you sit down for the duration of the food, you'll get that temporary buff. However, you need to be eating it at a campfire to get the temporary buff. And bread is kind of going to be your staple food, which is why that bread recipe is really good, because bread is pretty cheap to make and heals you by quite a decent amount. So that's something that you're going to be using quite often in the early game after you fight mobs. You can't use bread in combat. It's only an out-of-combat regen. So you kind of kill a camp, and then you would use bread or a campfire, or you can even use both, because when you eat at a campfire, it increases the effect of your regeneration from food, right? And then you kind of move on to the next camp, and that's basically how you do camps in this game. It's not like a game where you're going to be able to necessarily breeze from one camp to another, at least in the early game. As the classes kind of get more fleshed out as you level, you get more talent points, more abilities, etc. They become stronger and allow you to do various things. But until that point, the early game is definitely kind of sluggish and slow from a combat perspective. So that's why I recommend you rely heavily on completing the very early town quests and doing some very early gathering at least. And then once you get to around like level 8 or 9, at that point you're just a lot stronger and you can kind of handle more of the monster camps in the wild, as well as kind of tackle more of the main story quest and just higher level quests in general, right? So that's what I would recommend. Oh, there's also some PvP zones. They're on the basically the east side of the map right here. And how the PvP zones work is if you die in them, you drop 6 items. Now these aren't your equipped items, but they're items like from your inventory. I don't believe you can drop things like Grandmaster's Catalyst or catalysts in general or gear, although I'm not sure about that. I think it's mostly just resources you can drop, but I'm not 100% sure. And then if you die in the normal map, right, it's not a PvP area, you drop 1 item, and you can kind of go back and recover these items even if you do drop them. But the idea is if you get killed in the PvP area, the other player can loot your stuff. Whereas if you get killed in the PvE area, they can't, I believe, and you can kind of run back and get it as long as you're not too far away, because it does time out eventually. Now again, even if you die in the PvP area, you're not supposed to be able to lose gear that's like equipped on your character, like your weapon or your artifacts or something. I don't think, at least, unless you're like an outlaw, which would require you to have flagged up and killed somebody in the non-PvP area, I believe. So that's kind of all advanced stuff. You don't really have to worry about that too much. It tells you when you enter the PvP area. It'll say, there's like a red text, and it'll say like the area is not protected by the king, and the green areas are what are protected by the king, they say. And those are the ones where you're not allowed to be PvP'd on without the enemy flagging up, killing you, and then they become a criminal, right? So yeah, that's a brief little rundown about how the PvP stuff works. And the last thing I want to mention is how to get your mount. So level 8, you can get a mount, and it's in this city up here. The mount is really useful, and you want to get it as quick as you can after you hit level 8. So what I would recommend is try and save as much gold as possible. That would be the other updated version of this guide, outside of the 40% experience, or 40% monster experience and 40% quest experience. The other main thing that this alpha brought with it is mounts, and getting a mount early is going to make the game a lot less painful because it's a huge movement speed increase, and it's really powerful. It's 400 gold to get a mount, which is kind of steep, but you just save your gold, basically, do quests. And something you can do too is you can sell like consumables and stuff you don't need to the vendor. The best one to sell to tends to be Big Mama, because I think she gives you the best prices. If you craft stuff, a lot of the stuff you'll craft in terms of artifacts and weapons, that's all going to be bound to you early game. So how it works is if you hit 100% efficiency in weaponsmithing or construction, you can then trade those items to other players, right? But until you hit 100% efficiency, everything you're crafting is going to be only for you. It's going to be bound to you. So when you craft like 5 claws and 5 of them are bad, or 4 of them are bad and 1 of them's good, you keep the good one and you vendor the other ones to Big Mama in the middle here, right? So you can vendor consumes you make with alchemy. You can vendor runes. Runes are a good thing to vendor for early gold. So you can kind of vendor stuff that you make that you don't need, essentially, because how it works is there's a range on these items, and you're going to craft some of them. They're going to be bad. Some of them are going to be good. So you basically sell off the bad ones to a vendor, and you keep the good ones to use on yourself and your gear, right? And that's a great way to get gold in conjunction with the quests early on. And you should definitely be able to get 400 gold by around the time you hit level 8. And you just march up here. The guy is like in the center here somewhere, I believe. The vendor, he's like a bike vendor. You'll see him if you just look around enough. And then, yeah, you get the bike, and that makes the game a lot easier. And there's also a Hearthstone in the game. It's called like a teleporter or something. You can bind that at like Big Mama here, and that's what most people do. They just bind it at Big Mama, and then they go out into the wilderness, they kill things, and then if they want to come back, they just use their teleportation stone. If you're in the PvP zone, you can't teleport from the PvP zone, but if you walk out of the PvP zone, you can then use the teleporter. So that's basically how that works. But yeah, that's kind of the updated guide. Let me know what you guys think, if you have any feedback or anything like that. I hope this helps some of you, and have fun when the servers come back up in hopefully a couple hours. See you guys later, and until next time.